This is the Reviewing Network Live, a weekly stream of consciousness recording session where I sit back with you folks out there, talk about some of the big news stories from the past week, and some other things I found that might be of amusement to you out there. I think you might get a kick out of it. Now, these are more like audio podcasts and are much longer than my usual videos and are also, for the most part, unedited and will contain some foul language. So, if you're easily offended by that, I advise you to maybe step back a bit, maybe go somewhere else. But hey, if you're up to the challenge, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks. And for the 129th time, we are live on the Reviewing Network studios. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Reviewing Network Live on this Sunday evening. The final day of the Olympic Games. Hope all of you got to wake up early today to see the gold medal game between the United States and Canada in men's hockey, which was pretty damn spectacular. I mean, especially going all the way to overtime. U.S. wins their first gold medal in men's hockey in 46 years, just a couple of days after women's hockey wins the gold medal. Good times overall. The Olympics coming to a close tonight. And meanwhile, I have American Dad on right now, because American Dad comes back on Fox tonight as I'm recording this. But anyway, it's not been a specifically entertaining special weekend in terms of entertainment news in general. We have a couple things we're touching on here, especially with the continuing battle between Warner Brothers, Paramount, and Netflix. We have a couple of animated movie news, and we lost a couple of acting greats this week. Robert Duvall, Eric Dane passed away this week as well. So we're going to touch on those things and then some. But before we do any of that, of course, we start off how we usually start off with here, the weekend box office, which, like everything else this week, was nothing really all that spectacular. There was a couple of new releases we're talking about, but most of them were outside the top 5. There's only one new release in the top 5 that was notable this week, but we'll get to that as we go along here. So let's just go ahead and jump on into it. Starting with the number 5 movie, the Sam Raimi Send Help, still hanging in there after 4 weeks, bringing in $4.5 million, dropping 49% from last weekend. $55.5 million after 4 weeks. If you count the worldwide numbers, it is up to $83 million. Not bad for a movie that was, for one thing, only cost, I believe, $40 million to make, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, $40 million. And keep in mind, I have to keep bringing this up, Sony was going to originally put this movie out, but it was supposed to be a streaming movie, and so Sam Raimi basically said, well, fuck that, I'm going to go take this to Disney. I got that Doctor Strange money on me. And yeah, lo and behold, $83 million later, this movie is doing gangbuster business and a big hit for 20th Century Fox, 20th Century, especially considering the other new release they had this weekend. But we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and move on now to the number 3 movie this week, which is Crime 101, which brought in $5.8 million, dropping 60% from last week, bringing its 2-week total now to $24.7 million. Worldwide numbers, $46.3 million, a.k.a. pretty much half its budget. This thing cost $90 million to make, so yeah, it's got a long way to go to try to make that money back. Even though it was the best reviewed movie from last week, that $90 million budget in the end, though, is what's really going to cost it when it's all said and done. Movie I want to see, though. I haven't gotten around to check it out yet. I haven't really gotten to do a whole lot of movie watching as of late, but I did get to see the two releases from last week, which we'll get to in just a second, but let's move on now to number 3, the only new release this weekend, which is I Can Only Imagine 2. So the sequel to I Can Only Imagine, which was there really a demand for it, honestly, but did okay business, did the best, actually was the highest grossing of the new releases this week, brought in $8 million. Opened in 3,100 theaters, so it did get a wide release, an unusually wide release, and it only cost $18 million to make, so it's a movie where it's going to make its money back overall. If you don't remember the original I Can Only Imagine, probably nothing related to the original film, because I really don't remember this movie in particular, but it's got the same actor from the first movie, it's got the same setup here, and it's a story where the man who sings the song faces a personal crisis at the peak of his success. As his world unravels, he struggles with his beliefs and inner demons while seeking a path through adversity. So, typical Christian movie setup here, and like I said, I really don't have a whole lot of interest in these movies in particular, so Heaven forbid if I'm not going to go into this with any kind of expectations whatsoever. But hey, at least it's doing a lot better than a lot of the other movies that came out this weekend, because there were a lot of flops this weekend. We'll get to those as we move along here, but let's go ahead and move on to probably the more intriguing battle of the entire weekend. The only thing worth talking about in this top 5, really. Which brings us now to the number 2 movie this week, which was the number 1 movie last week, which we kind of expected to happen. Wuthering Heights did have that big drop-off from last weekend, although it was not as bad as most people, I think, were expecting it to be. $14.2 million, dropping 57% from last week, still bringing its 2-week total up to $60 million. And if you count the worldwide numbers, it's up to $151 million worldwide. But, considering the fact that Warner Brothers won this over Netflix, and Netflix was essentially going to give them $150 million to make this movie, it's a good fit. It was good on Warner them to take it to WB because they made their money back on this. It's a big hit, even though the movie isn't all that great, but it is what it is. So yeah, I didn't like it per se. I know a lot of people really didn't like it. Most people thought it was kind of boring. At least I thought it was boring, but I did not think it was going to be... I mean, it was already going to make its money back regardless, especially after what happened last weekend. So everyone wins on their part at Warner Brothers. Meanwhile, people like me have a contender for one of the worst movies of the year so far with that film. But that does bring us to the number 1 movie of the week, which we kind of expected to happen because Wuthering Heights was expected to have this huge drop-off. Meanwhile, there's a big new family film for kids out there. So, number 1 movie this week is The GOAT. GOAT brought in $17 million, only dropping 38% from last weekend, which brings its 2-week total now to $58.3 million. If you count the worldwide numbers, it's up to $102.3 million. So the budget on this was $80 to $90 million, so it has indeed made its money back overall. And like I said, it's mostly because, yeah, there's a lack of new kids films out there. We had this Christmas rush with Zootopia, Avatar, SpongeBob, and now everyone's looking for the next big family film overall, and GOAT was that film in particular, and it should continue to do well at least through next week. But I will say this for Zootopia 2, it brought in $2.3 million this weekend after 13 weeks, and is bringing its total now up to $423.9 million, which means one thing and one thing only. It's only $200,000 away from surpassing a Minecraft movie as the highest grossing film of 2025. Saints be praised, hallelujah. Hallelujah, a good movie is going to finally be the highest grossing film of the year, and not that fucking garbage that is a Minecraft movie. Fuck that movie, man. But with all due respect, Avatar Fire and Ash brought in is still doing well too, closing in on $400 million overall. So, I mean, they're still hanging in there in the top 5, in the top 10, but really nothing that too shocking considering they've been around for a while now. But it is interesting to see that there are some stuff being put out for this movie GOAT, which I saw at Walmart yesterday. There was like a display of like figurines and like those little plastic balls where you don't know what you're going to get inside there, but you get a Go figure inside of there. There was like t-shirts and blankets and all that type of stuff. So they are putting the money out there on this stuff here, and so far it's been paying dividends for them thus far, and they should continue to do well next weekend because there's no big family competition until Hoppers comes out in 2 weeks' time. But, of course, next week, the big new release everyone's going to be looking at is Scream 7, whether or not that movie is going to benefit from the marketing they've been doing, and not the fact that from the behind the scenes troubles they've been dealing with. Toy boat, toy boat. Specifically, the way that they forced Nev Campbell back into the movie, even though they were already working on a different storyline, but they basically shut that down once Melissa Barrera said her comments about the Gaza war, which were really ridiculous. That whole thing was ridiculous on how they basically fired her and they basically ruined what they established, so they can just redo another story with Nev Campbell, even though they pretty much finished that story up already. Like, I mean, I really don't know how this movie is going to do at all. I don't think it's going to do very well. I mean, it'll probably do good enough business, because this movie probably doesn't... I can't imagine this movie's going to have that big of a budget to it overall, so any money they make on this should probably be good enough, but I just don't think the demand is going to be there for a lot of people to go to this movie because of how they completely ruined what they were setting up in Screams 5 and 6. I mean, this is somebody that's coming into this series relatively new, so I really don't have, like, I'm not really going into this as a Scream defender or anything, but I'm sorry, the last couple of movies were really good, and going back to this, when you've kind of already set an end to the storyline here, feels like they're kind of on fumes at this point here. But then again, maybe the demand is there for a new Scream movie, and I just don't know it yet. But other than that, though, I don't think there's any other big new releases coming up next week. There is a couple of new releases this week worth talking about here, movies that kind of were not the biggest hits overall. How to Make a Killing was one of those ones that was highly being touted and did not make it's a movie called How to Make a Killing, and yet this movie didn't make any kind of killing whatsoever. Brought in $3.5 million this weekend on a budget of $40 million, with a movie that has Glenn Campbell, Margaret Qualley, Jessica Henwick, Zach Woods, Topher Grace, Ed Harris. Sold as the marketing for this was like a 90s, early 2000s style movie, but it's being sold also as like a black comedy from the 1980s. So it has all these weird things going on with it, and it's showing in the critical reviews for this, which is at 48% on Rotten Tomatoes and a Metacritic of 52 out of 100. Not really a good sign for this film going forward from Studio Canal and A24. And the end results have spoken for themselves. The movie not doing very well overall on that front. But then you have Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, which is like a series of Elvis Presley concert footage from Baz Luhrmann. Brought in $3.2 million. Not bad business overall, especially considering that made $10,000 per screen average in 325 theaters overall. So it did decent business despite not a big lack of a marketing push for it. But the one movie that I think is going to be something that's worth talking about on how this movie completely fucked everything up was Psycho Killer, Qu'est-ce que c'est? Run away. I'm sorry for going into talking heads here, but hey, it's the only time I'm ever going to bring this up because, man, this movie not just only flopped at the box office, it bombed everywhere. This thing brought in $1.6 million, which is, isn't the worst outcome for this in 1,100 theaters, but considering that there was a big marketing push for this all the way back in October, and then all of a sudden the last couple of weeks, it was basically just a movie that really felt like something was really off here in particular. It's not a high-budgeted movie either. It's only a film that costs less than $10 million to make, so it's not going to be like a gigantic flop overall, but for a movie that had a big push early on in October and November, and then once the reviews came out, for the longest time this weekend, it had a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has moved up, though, to 7%, which is not really anything that better, but, for the longest time it had a 0%. You have any idea how bad you have to be a film that's considered a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes? Like, for a long time, movies like Freddy Got Fingered, Battlefield Earth, Glitter, The Master of Disguise, from Justin to Kelly, these movies had higher ratings than Psycho Killer did. Just think about that for a second. I'll wait. Have you done yet? Okay. But, yeah. if Psycho Killer was on that was almost on that list of films, notorious films like Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol, Bolero, Problem Child, Highlander 2, The Quickening, Return to the Blue Lagoon, Folks, Look Who's Talking Now, Wagons East, Ballistics, X vs. Sever, Pinocchio, the Roberto Benigni movie, Gold Digger, Super Babies, Baby Geniuses 2, One Missed Call, Nutcracker 3D, The Ridiculous Six, Left Behind, Max Steel, yeah. That's how you know this movie was just. I mean, this movie was close to being on that level of a thing. But the biggest fault of the movie seems to be a rudimentary cat and mouse thriller with laughable ideas about Satanism and an absurd, cringy ending, as William Bibbiani of The Rap wrote in his review. So yeah, this. And here's the interesting thing about this whole thing for me is that I was supposed to go see this movie this weekend, but it never opened up around here. And I should probably be counting my blessings for that because I may have missed out on one of the worst movies of the year. But then again, I'll probably wait for it to come out on Blu-ray at some point or on streaming. You know what the worst part about this whole thing is that they're promoting this as a movie from the producer of Weapons and Barbarian. Roy Lee is one of the producers on this. This movie's probably going to get a Blu-ray release, and yet Barbarian, which was a highly acclaimed movie when it came out and was a big hit in theaters, has yet to get a proper Blu-ray release, a physical media release here, and that movie's probably never going to get a proper release on physical media, but this movie might. What the hell is all that about? You would think after Weapons came out and Zach Cregger's success on that movie, you would think somebody would say, this Barbarian movie that he did, maybe we should go ahead and release this movie out to people in general. And sadly, it is yet to be released on a physical format release. Zach Cregger himself even said he's unsuccessfully lobbied the 20th Century Studios for a physical format release. Why would you not put this out? That movie's going to be more memorable than this movie is going to be. Psycho Killer will be, and yet Psycho Killer will probably get a physical release in the future, but not this movie. Which, I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. It's just a real uncertain thing in general here, and it looks like we're never going to get it unless Shout Factory or Arrow Video or these boutique media titles basically says, okay, here, we'll put the money out there. You can go ahead and let us release this movie to the media, but to the public overall. But anyway, that's good. Anyway, that's my rant about Barbarian not getting a physical release. But Psycho Killer will get one because the world is so screwed up. I don't know. But anyway, that is the weekend box office. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the big news stories this week. And let's start off with the continuing, which is now turning into a soap opera. That is the Paramount Warner Brothers Netflix merger controversy. Previously on All My Mergers. Like I said, this is turning into a freaking soap opera at this point. Netflix and Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, when we last left, Warner Brothers essentially was coming out and saying that they will take a look at Paramount's newest demands and gives Netflix 1 week to essentially decide on a much better deal than what Paramount is offering them. So they basically we should find this out by tomorrow or Tuesday at this point. But if you would think that would be the only drama left, but no, other forces are coming into play here with the merger, with this merger, and some of them include notable filmmakers like James Cameron came out really in favor with Paramount, and then the man who said he wasn't going to get involved in this got involved in it by adding something where he's basically literally threatening Netflix to do something, or essentially the merger will not go through. I mean, that's literally what he's doing here. But let's go ahead and start back on Monday when this whole thing got started. The whole week got started. So it was actually Netflix that started this whole thing off with Warner telling Warner Brothers, we open the talks up with Paramount. This is literally from what they said. So this comes from CNN. Come on. There we go. This is from CNN, who says, Warner Bros. Discovery wants to hear Paramount's best and final proposal for the media company and is opening a brief window for discussions about a bid, while also moving forward with its Netflix merger and urging shareholders to reject Paramount's current hostile bid. If that sounds convoluted, that's because it is. Warner Bros. Discovery is worth tens of billions of dollars, and the company board is trying to ensure it squeezes every possible billion out of its suitors. So on Tuesday morning, Warner Bros. Discovery said it was reopening talks with Paramount, seeking a higher price while recognizing that Netflix can and likely will match the price. And on Tuesday afternoon, Paramount welcomed the chance to have good faith and constructive discussions. Netflix, for its part, criticized Paramount aggressively on Tuesday, saying that Paramount's financially challenges and rapidly deleveraging plans pose tremendous risk to the entertainment industry. Last December, Warner Brothers agreed to sell most of its company, including the studio and HBO, to Netflix. WBD's cable channels, including CNN, are not part of the sale. The deal with Netflix doubles as a rejection of Paramount, but Paramount CEO David Ellison responded by going directly to shareholders with a $30 per share offer for all of WBD, including CNN. That's the offer WB is officially opposing. On Tuesday morning, WBD said it will hold a special shareholder meeting on March 20th and will recommend voting to approve the Netflix deal, which values the studio at streaming assets at $27.75 per share. Warner Bros. Discovery has argued that the sale to Netflix, along with the creation of Discovery Global, a new company housing the cable channels, is the best available option for investors, while calling the Paramount proposal overly risky, and likening it to a leveraged buyout. But there is a big unknown. What is Paramount's best and final offer? In negotiating parlances, that's the most a buyer is willing to pay, and Paramount hasn't shared its answer. During the initial bidding war for WBD last year, Paramount indicated it was willing to pay more than $30 per share. Last week, according to a WBD spokesperson, a person speaking on Paramount's behalf told a Warner Brothers member that Paramount would agree to $31 paid per share if the two sides held deal talks. The person left some additional wiggle room by indicating that $31 was not the final offer. And so despite having a signed merger agreement, Netflix has granted WBD a limited waiver to talk with Paramount for the next 7 days. "We seek your best and final proposal," WBD said in a letter to Paramount's board on Tuesday morning. The rest of the letter, full of financial jargon and legalese, can be translated thusly: "It's time to put up or shut up." Paramount responded Tuesday afternoon by calling the WBD board's actions unusual, but adding Paramount is nonetheless prepared to engage in good faith and constructive discussions. At the same time, we will continue to advance our tender offer, maintain our solicitation in opposition to the inferior Netflix merger, and proceed with our intentions to nominate a slate of directors at the upcoming WBD annual meeting, Paramount said. Paramount made some moves in WBD's direction last weekend with an amended proposal that slightly sweetened the takeover terms. Holding talks with Paramount now might unlock even more cash for a company that was barely trading at $10 per share 1 year ago before all the sales talk erupted. Throughout the entire process, our sole focus has been on maximizing value and certainty for WBD shareholders, WBD CEO David Zaslav said in the Tuesday press release. Referring to Paramount by its stock ticker symbol, he said, "Every step of the way, we have provided Paramount Sky with clear direction on the deficiencies in their offers and opportunities to address them. We are engaging with Paramount Skydance now to determine whether they can deliver an actionable, binding proposal that provides superior value and certainty for WBD shareholders through their best and final offer." Paramount has already filed a lawsuit over the merger's matter, so WBD's latest by-the-book move might also be seen as a legal safeguard. And it just continues on here, going on here in general here. So that was on Tuesday. But now the story has continued to just evolve into something completely different. And it just keeps getting more and more complicated overall, because another person has been brought to the table in this, and that is James Cameron, who is backing Paramount Pictures. So this is from the Hollywood Reporter, and it says that James Cameron is going to bat for Paramount in the bidding war for Warner Bros. Discovery. In a letter sent by Senator Mike Lee, the Republican from Utah, Cameron argues that allowing Netflix to purchase the studio will deal a disastrous blow to movie theaters and weaken an essential cog of the Hollywood machinery in a way that will lead to substantial job losses. The letter dated February 10th amplifies concerns from lawmakers in the Justice Department that the potential sale will result in fewer films being released in theaters. While the government's main focus has been Netflix's dominance in streaming, it's also pressed Netflix on what will happen to Warner Brothers movies if it were to acquire the company. Cameron nods to prior remarks from Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos calling the movie theaters an outdated concept and an outmoded idea. The business model of Netflix is directly at odds with the theatrical film production and exhibition business, which employs hundreds of thousands of Americans. He writes in this missive first published by CNBC. It is therefore directly at odds with the best business models of the Warner Brothers movie division, one of the few remaining major movie studios. Warner Brothers releases roughly 15 movies per year in theaters. Cameron and others in Hollywood are concerned that Netflix will lower that figure. It will be a blow to the exhibition community, theater owners, and their tens to thousands of employees, and at a critical time to have this production output redirected to streaming, the letter states. If movie theaters see less business, the entire industry will suffer, Cameron says. If tempos are no longer greenlit because the market contracts further, he writes, then many jobs will be lost. He adds theaters will close, fewer films will be made, service providers such as VFX companies will go out of business, the job losses will spiral. Testifying before the Senate Subcommittee on Antitrust earlier this month, Sarandos commended a 45-day theatrical window when asked by lawmakers on the deal's impact in theaters. Color Cameron skeptical. He argues Netflix will likely change course in a few years since theatrical releases fundamentally clash with its business model. The letter states, what are the teeth in the deal? What administrative bodies will hold them to task if they slowly sunset their so-called commitment to theatrical releases? But once they own a major movie studio, that is irrevocable. The ship has sailed. Cameron also says that the pledge doesn't mean anything unless Sarandos specifies the numbers of theaters where Warner Brothers movies will be displayed. Netflix has done only a handful of theatrical releases and only them under pressure for prestigious filmmakers. But these are usually in a token number of theaters and mostly done to qualify for Academy Awards. These releases do not represent the bread and butter of the exhibition business. Cameron positions Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers as a bad deal for both consumers who will get to see fewer movies and filmmakers who will see fewer choices for studios interested in investing in their projects. One avenue the government could pursue to block the deal is a monopsony theory, or whether the combined company would have too much power over creators and talent. I am but a humble movie farmer, and I see my future creativity and productivity directly threatened by this proposed sale. In an interview last year on the Town podcast, Cameron endorsed the David Ellison-led company's bid for Warner Brothers. I think Paramount's the best choice. Netflix would be a disaster. Sorry, Ted, but geez. Sarandos has gone on the record saying theatrical films are dead. Theatrical is dead, quote unquote. And I will say this, James Cameron, I don't feel so bad for calling your Avatar Fire and Ash a piece of shit now because, man, talk about showing how much that you really are siding with the bad guys on this one. I'm sorry. I keep telling people all the time with this whole thing. Look, neither one of these deals is really good, but Netflix is a better company to take over Warner Brothers than Paramount is, because we touched on this week after week after week. We're seeing what's happening right now with the new Paramount regime on their stuff at CBS. Like, look at what they did to Stephen Colbert again this week. Like, months after they after they said they were getting rid of him, they're getting on him again because of why? Oh, because you disrupted the equal time rules that we're putting in right now from a Republican-led FCC company, and because it was all because of an interview with a Texas senator candidate in James Telesco. Is that his name? James Tallarico. I'm sorry, James Tallarico. And so they couldn't put that on CBS, and now CBS is saying, well, no, we didn't say that. It's just like, I mean, the whole thing is getting ridiculous, and, every time Paramount does something stupid, it's more and more reasons why Warner Brothers should stay the hell away from them, and I think that's what they're doing here, but, having somebody like James Cameron coming out on this really hurts James Cameron more than it does Netflix here. But no, but if you thought it couldn't get any more ridiculous, if you think it couldn't get any more stupid than that, then it's because not only did that happen, but then, apparently the DOJ agreed to a Warner Brothers Paramount merger. But that wasn't even entirely clear on how that was handled, because this is from, is this even from, can I even read this article here? I can't. So this is from Forbes, and this was on Friday when this news broke, and it says, the regulatory hurdle cleared by Paramount's guidance still means I'm reading the wrong thing here. Okay, I went to the Forbes website. It wasn't really giving me the whole article here, but this is Paramount. This is Paramount. This is Deadline Hollywood with the story here. This was on Friday. Paramount has cleared a 10-day waiting period after responding to a second request for information from the DOJ surrounding its unsolicited offer for Warner Brothers Discovery. The company said today that the expiration of the waiting period under the Hart-Scott-Rodino Antitrust Act means there's no statutory impediment in the U.S. to closing the acquisition. Paramount unusually has moved on regulatory approvals without a deal in hand, so there is nothing to close on. WBD has agreed to a sale of assets to Netflix. So the DOJ basically agreed to something that hasn't even been put out yet. And even today, Netflix's Ted Sarandos basically came out and said, Give them a better offer. And this is like 10 hours ago, and the thing is supposed to be done either tomorrow or Tuesday, and it's just like they have nothing. But it gets better than that. Actually, I'll read you this article right here, because it's literally right here on this page. So Ted Sarandos was at the BAFTA Awards, which were earlier today, and he basically said, "We have a signed deal with Warner Brothers. They're trying to circumvent it. The only thing I would like in the process is, if you want to try and outbid our deal, just make a better deal. Just put a better deal on the table. Don't make up stories. Don't spread misinformation about market share. Just put a better deal on the table and see if you can win." I mean, it's something where it's just like, it should be just as simple as that. But no, it gets even more complicated, because the man who said that he was going to stay out of this whole thing, our president, Donald Trump, basically came out to Netflix and basically gave him an ultimatum to either do something that he wants, or essentially say goodbye to the deal. I mean, he's not really saying that, but he's really saying that. So this was from yesterday, and it basically says, this is on Deadline again, Donald Trump called on Netflix to fire one of its board members, Susan Rice, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and National Security Advisor, following comments she made about accountability when Democrats returned to power. Trump posted on Truth Social Saturday, "Netflix should fire racist Trump-deranged Susan Rice immediately or pay the consequences. She's got no talent or skills, purely a political hack. Her power is gone and will never be back. How much is she being paid and for what? Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DGAT." This is one of those moments where you just want to tell the person, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." Like, his only reason for saying this is because that A, she's a Democrat, and B, she's got no talent or skills. Really? I mean, that's really the best you got, Donald. A Netflix spokesperson did not immediately return a request for comment. Really, they shouldn't have to at this point, because it's literally a threat by the president for Netflix to drop to do this or say goodbye to your deal. I mean, that's literally what this whole thing is about. Like, they're not even trying to hide the fact how scummy this government is, or these group of people are. Like, this is so ridiculous. This is so stupid on every single level on how this whole thing is being handled here. And really, Warner Brothers just needs to simply tell Paramount, no. Like, this is getting to the point where at some point you're going to have to stop, and you're going to have to stop, or this is basically the equivalent of a stalker stalking somebody, and just like, dude, you're getting to the point now where I'm literally going to put a restraining order on you if you don't get the fuck away from me, because that's literally the situation that we're at right now. Like, this whole thing is reaching a boiling point here, and it's something where they're not going to stop until they get what they want. And I'm afraid sooner or later Warner Brothers is just basically going to give the baby what it wants, and I don't want that to happen. I don't think anybody really wants that to happen. Like I said, both of these situations is not good for Warner Brothers, but I entrust Netflix more than Warner Brothers, because Netflix is doing everything they should be doing to sell people on this deal. Meanwhile, Paramount is doing everything to tell people not to sign with them and not to join them. And they're already planning their next attack, because they're going to try to. I read something not too long ago. They said that there was something online about Paramount trying to buy Universal now. So they're basically trying to create this oligarchy here, and it's just, I mean, it's getting ridiculous now. So even if they lose this battle, it's still far from over here. They're going to try to get other studios to get involved in here. Like, the next one is their next target is Universal, and it's never going to stop with these people, unfortunately. And the hope is that this week we get a final conclusion to this overall scenario here. But we know that this is going to continue on for a long period of time here. So yeah, that's all we really got to say about this whole thing right now. So we'll see you back here next week for the continuing saga of the soap opera, which seems to never be going away at this point. So I've been talking shit about Paramount throughout this whole segment here, but let's talk about some good things that happened this week from them. And one of the big things they announced this week was the fact that, for one thing, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the new sequel, is getting moved up a month to August of 2017. I think August 13th is when it's coming out now next year, which makes sense, because we're releasing it in the month of September. I didn't think that was really a smart decision on their part, considering how the first movie was a big hit in August of 2023, but it's coming out in August of 2027 now. But one of the other stories that broke this week about them was the fact that they found the voice of Amy Rose for Sonic the Hedgehog 4. This is from The Hollywood Reporter, and it says that Paramount Pictures' Sonic the Hedgehog franchise has found the voice for its Amy Rose. Kristen Bell has closed the deal to voice the character in Sonic the Hedgehog 4, the latest in the studio's hit movie franchise based on the Sega video games. The franchise keeps adding bold face names to the voice cast with each entry. Bell now joins stalwarts Ben Schwartz, who voices Sonic, Idris Elba, who voices Knuckles, and joined in Sonic 2, and Keanu Reeves, who voices Shadow as of Sonic 3. The live-action actors in the franchise, Jim Carrey as the villainous Dr. Robotnik, Lee Majjob as loyal assistant, along with James Marsden and Tika Sumpter, who played Sonic's adopted family parental figures. Most are expected to return to reprise their parts. Jeff Fowler, who directed the previous 3 movies, is back as the helmets chair for this one. Paramount has scheduled a March 19, 2027 release date for what has become one of the marquee money-making franchises of the 2020s. The 3 films have surpassed $1 billion at the global box office, with the latest installment becoming the highest-grossing film of the series, earning over $490 million. Plot details are being kept in the console. In the games, Rose is a pink hedgehog and Sonic's would-be girlfriend, whether he knows it or not. Paramount has been using each movie's mid-credit scene to tease the main characters that would be featured in the follow-up movie. In Sonic 3's credits, Sonic is being chased by an army of Metal Sonics, only to be saved by Rose. And then there was a picture on Instagram showing Ben Schwartz and Kristen Bell working on the film, and of course these two work together on House of Lies. And Kristen Bell, of course, is working on the Frozen movies, and also Nobody Wants This. And also she's going to be Mrs. Claus in the upcoming Violent Night 2, which I'm definitely looking forward to. So, I mean, this falls right into the category of what we expect to see with the Sonic movies in general. I like the fact that with each passing film, the studio basically lets the filmmakers do what they want to do because they know people are going to come to see these movies because the results have spoken for themselves. And yeah, these movies are essentially fish out of water. It started off as a fish out of water story, but with each passing film, as they become more and more popular and more successful, Paramount's essentially letting them do whatever they want because they know they're going to bet the money off of this. And sure enough, the end results are speaking for themselves here with this. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be very excited to see that. I'm glad they went with somebody like her because they could have easily casted somebody like Sydney Sweeney. I think they were thinking about getting her. I think Zendaya was also considered a choice as well. But yeah, they got somebody who's a recognizable talent overall and somebody I really like a lot. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they do with this film in general. And hopefully that's going to continue the pathway that they're going on here with the Sonic films getting better and better with every film. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to another Paramount franchise that's trying to get going, but unfortunately lost its director this week. But really, was the world seriously demanding a Face-Off 2 at this point? So this is again from The Hollywood Reporter. The story is that the planned sequel to the 1990s action movie Face-Off now has an available director's chair. Adam Wingard, who was previously attached to write and helm, what the hell happened there? Adam Wingard, who was previously attached to write and helm, left the Paramount Pictures project last summer, with both sides mutually agreeing to part ways. The Hollywood Reporter has confirmed. Face-Off 2 is now an open assignment at the studio, with other filmmakers pitching their own visions for the follow-up to the original 1997 cult favorite that starred Johnny Depp and Nicolas Cage. Back in 2019, the news broke that a Face-Off remake was in the works from producer Neil Morwitz, with Paramount hiring Oren Uzeli to pen the script. In 2021, the studio brought on Wingard to direct a sequel from a screenplay that he had written with Simon Barrett. Wingard's next film is the forthcoming A24 film Onslaught, starring Adria Arjona, Dan Stevens, Drew Starkey, and Rebecca Hall. His previous films included The Guest and the 2016 sequel Blair Witch, along with the MonsterVerse hits Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Director John Woo's original Face-Off centered on an FBI agent played by John Travolta and a terrorist, Nicolas Cage, who swapped faces and identities through an experimental procedural. Paramount released the film in June 1997 and surpassed $240 million at the global box office and landing an Academy Award nomination for sound effects editing. During a 2024 interview with The Hollywood Reporter to promote Godzilla x Kong, Wingard teased his excitement for the progress that he had made on Face-Off 2. I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the Face-Off thing, but yeah, I think the script is really fucking awesome, the filmmaker said at the time. It is one of those things where you read it and you're like, oh shit, this is a true sequel to Face-Off that I could have never dreamed of. And again, I ask, is there anyone out there really demanding a sequel to Face-Off? I mean, Face-Off is a great movie, but here's the problem I have with this whole thing. And really, it's again something I've touched on numerous times on various videos on here and on blog posts as well. It's just like, just because a movie was popular back in the day does not mean it needs a sequel 20 to 30 years later. I mean, this past year alone, we had so many bad sequels and remakes from films from 20 to 30 years ago that did not need to be made. There was no demand for a Happy Gilmore 2 or Freaky Friday 2 or Coming to America, one of the ones I always bring up here. But I mean, the demand is not there for these movies in general. I really don't think there is a demand for The Devil Wears Prada 2 coming up. Like, we got that coming up in a couple of months now. And it's just like, who is asking for this now in 2026? Nobody cares. And we all know how it's going to turn out. People are it's going to get good reviews because everyone's just like, oh, it's great to see these characters again. And I'm going to be like, yeah, it's great to see the characters again, but unfortunately, there's no story for them to get. There's no story to really have them come back for this at this point. It's just like, why are we even here again? It makes no sense whatsoever to keep making these sequels for no other reason except for name recognition. It's just like, I'm sorry, I don't see the need for another Face-Off movie. I mean, there's nothing you can really do to top the original Face-Off. The original Face-Off is a great movie. And by adding another movie to it, it's the Twisters thing all over again. Like, Twisters was another one of those examples. Nobody cares. Nobody was asking for a Twisters sequel. Nobody was really asking for that at all. What did that really add to the story? Absolutely nothing. Like, what was the point? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever why they're doing this, but sadly, they're going to keep doing this because they're still in the mindset of, well, Top Gun and Ghostbusters were big hits at the start of the decade. Okay, well, just because they were doing that doesn't mean you have to just continue every previous movie that came out in the last 20 to 30 years for no other reason except for name recognition. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I'm glad to see Adam Wingard stepping away from this, and hopefully he'll hand this off. He'll move on to something bigger and better than this, but yeah, nobody was really asking for a Face-Off sequel, and really nobody's really asking for these sequels and reboots and remakes that we've gotten over the last couple of years, especially these more recent ones. Can we just let it go already, please? 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 Okay, I'm moving on now. So let's go ahead and move on to the last news story I have this week, and it involves the return of Venom. So yeah, after the Venom trilogy came out in live-action form, the character is getting another film, but this time it's going to be animated. This also comes from the Hollywood Reporter, and it says that Sony's Venom franchise has a new Final Destination, which will tell you who's going to be directing this movie here. The studio behind the Marvel anti-hero movies is developing its first animated movie based off the character, and it has tapped Zach Sapkowski and Adam B. Stein, the duo behind last year's surprise horror hit Final Destination Bloodlines, to direct the project. Amy Pascal, Avi Arad, and Matt Tolmach, who worked on the Venom movies, will produce the feature. Tom Hardy, who started the studio's recent trilogy of live-action movies as Eddie Brock, the human who bonds with the Black Ooze alien symbiote, and provided the voice of Venom, is involved in the animated project as a producer as well, as is Kelly Marcel, his go-to screenwriter for the live-action movies. No writer is attached to the project, although Sony's animation arm, Sony Pictures Animation, is opening up a writer's room on developing a script or takes. Venom was created by writer Bill Michelini and artist Todd McFarlane, who was famously introduced as a villain in 1988's Amazing Spider-Man number 300 and quickly became a fan favorite as well as one of his arch nemesis. He got his first solo comic in 1993. The character then made his big screen debut in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, played by Topher Grace. Released in 2018, it's funny because they say Sam Raimi's Amazing Spider-Man 3, which never happened, but it says that in the article here. But released in 2018, Venom, top-lined by Hardy, scored an astounding $856 million worldwide, opening Sony's eyes to the popularity of the character in the height of the comic book movie boom. However, the franchise took a slow downward slope, and financially and creatively, with 2021's Venom Let There Be Carnage, $506.8 million, and then Venom's The Last Dance, $478.9 million in 2024. Going the animation route, in theory, allows Sony to keep Venom-related content fresh and relevant. SPA has found great success and Oscar gold making animated Spider-Verse movies with the Phil Lord and Chris Miller films as writers and producers. The animation process, however, is painstakingly slow, with the script not even on the horizon. Any Venom movie is years away. Lepofsky and Stein, meanwhile, know a thing or two about bringing in fresh blood to the long-in-the-tooth franchises. With Bloodlines, they reinvigorated this is a terribly written article because it literally says here, with Bloodlines, reinvigorated a moribund Warner's title instead of they reinvigorated a moribund Warner's title. But With Bloodlines, they reinvigorated a moribund Warner's title, helming the first Final Destination movie in 14 years to a $315 million gross. It not only became the highest grossing entry in the franchise, but also the best reviewed. Since then, they have become one of the town's it filmmakers and were brought on board to work on Chris Columbus on the new Gremlins movie. They are also directing the original thriller Long Lost, described as What Lies Beneath meets Rosemary's Baby, which is set up at Universal with Amblin Entertainment producing. Which that one actually sounds kind of badass overall. And yeah, they're still working on the Gremlins movie, which you would think we would have heard something by now, considering that this is supposed to be getting released next November in 2027. But yeah, when it comes to the Venom movies in general, I've seen them all. None of them are really all that great, but they're not as bad as I think I thought they were going to be. The first one's just kind of okay. You get an occasional funny moment here and there. Second one is kind of ridiculous in its own merits, and every film gets kind of stupider as they go along, with those brief flashes of promise here and there, but none of these movies really are memorable or great to begin with overall, so I think you can do a lot, and really, it goes back to what I've been saying before, like, animation has worked a lot better with a lot of franchises than live action. I mean, we've gotten the best Spider-Man movies of all time through animation. I mean, the best Batman movie, besides The Dark Knight, is Mask of the Phantasm. So there are definitely ways that animation can really beat the crap out of live action. So I think if you're going to get a good Venom movie, it's best to do it in animated form. I think there is a way to do this. And I think that with the guys from Final Destination Bloodlines involved, I think they might actually have a chance to make something pretty cool out of this overall. So yeah, it'd be nice to have a good Venom movie for once in our lives. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that project in general here. But we're still a long way to go from that actually getting made. So that's all the big news stories I wanted to cover this week. So let's go ahead and move on to a couple of notable deaths we had this week. And I guess I'll start off with the more recent one, Eric Dane. Now, for those of you who don't remember who Eric Dane is, Eric Dane was an actor that mostly known as playing McDreamy on Grey's Anatomy. He's also been on a bunch of other TV shows. He was on Charmed. I really liked his work on both The Last Ship and also Euphoria. He's also in a bunch of other stuff like X-Men The Last Stand, Marley and Me, Valentine's Day. He was in Burlesque. He was in Bad Boys Ride or Die, where he played a really good villain overall. When his career began, he was in stuff like Saved by the Bell, The Wonder Years, Roseanne, Married with Children, Gideon's Crossing. He was in the Helter Skelter miniseries. So he's done a lot of stuff you might be very familiar with overall. But he passed away this week at the age of 53 years old. He had ALS. He was an ALS. He had somebody with ALS. He was somebody with ALS who announced that he had the disease in April of 2025, and this was about a month after he broke up with his wife, Rebecca Gayheart, which that probably makes that whole situation a lot worse now, knowing the fact that you just got divorced from your wife, and then all of a sudden you have ALS, and he was beginning to feel symptoms as early as June, and then he lost his ability to use his right arm and hand, and then by October that year, he was basically in a wheelchair full time, and then he died on February 19th at 53 years old, and really a really tragic thing to happen to the guy, because he was a good actor overall. Like I said, I really like what he did with The Last Ship, which is one of TNT's more underrated shows. But he also was great on Euphoria. He's done a lot of other TV stuff that I touched on before. And I thought he was a really good villain in Bad Boys Ride or Die. That was a very underrated performance in that movie. That was which was a great film overall. But sad to see him go after everything he'd gone through. And it sucks, man. ALS is something where it's just I just touched on the movie Still Alice, which features Julianne Moore playing an ALS patient. Even though I didn't like that movie per se, it's a really hard topic of discussion to really make into entertainment value. But the last couple of years we've had, of course, the Ice Bucket Challenge that helped to benefit the fight for ALS, and of course, you see that movie Still Alice in general, and it's just, it's a tragic thing to happen, and I feel for the family. I really do feel bad for the family, for the Dane family in general. Just tragic thing that happened to them. So rest in peace, Eric Dane. We'll miss you very much, and we'll also miss, of course, the biggest tragedy. The biggest news this week was the death of Robert Duvall. Now, Robert Duvall lived a very long life. He lived to be 95 years old. Just turned 95 on January 5th earlier this year. But when you talk about one of the great actors of our time, this is Robert Altman. Robert Duvall was definitely one of those guys. I mean, this is the guy that has so many memorable film works from the very first role he had, where he only had 2 words, and that was as Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird, where he just basically tells Boo, hey Boo. I mean, that's a performance where he really doesn't say a whole lot, but it's just the way that his facial expressions really show what a great future this guy was going to have as an actor, because he would follow it up with stuff like Bullet, and of course True Grit, MASH, THX 1138, and of course everyone knows him for his work in the Godfather films, and then he won the Oscar for playing Max Sledge in Tender Mercies, which some people called that kind of too similar to Coal Miner's Daughter, which I tend to agree with here. It's not the greatest movie overall, and that one really did feel like one of those here's an Oscar for your body of work type of performances. But the guy has so many great performances all across the board, man. Apocalypse Now, The Great Santini, great underrated gems of films that really don't get talked about all this much. I mean, one of my favorite underrated films of his is Kicking and Screaming, which is a comedy, a really funny, probably one of my favorite underrated Will Ferrell comedies. One where he basically is playing he's the father of Will Ferrell's character, and just so many. He has a lot of great moments in that movie. The Paper is another great movie that he was in. He's great as the detective in Falling Down. There's a really great movie with Michael Douglas in it. Newsies, with him playing Joseph Pulitzer. I mean, he was fantastic in that. He was also in Network. He was also in The Natural. Colors is a great underrated film of his. He was one of the few things I really liked about Days of Thunder. I can go on and on. A Family Thing is a truly great underrated movie with him and James Earl Jones playing as brothers from another mother, quite literally. And 2 great legends in that movie. A very underrated film, co-written by Billy Bob Thornton, pre-Sling Blade. Deep Impact's another really great one he's in. The Sixth Day. He was great in Secondhand Lions with Michael Caine. Thank You for Smoking, We Own the Night. Crazy Heart, another country movie. Jack Reacher. If I had to pick one of his better movies that don't really get a whole lot of attention, probably for good reasons, because the movie really is not all that great except for this one scene, and that's The Judge, the one with him with Robert Downey Jr., another movie I just covered recently on Time About the Movies. The Judge is not a great movie, but it has one of the best acting scenes, especially from a guy like Duvall, where it's him and Robert Downey Jr. They're having this big argument during this massive tornado, this massive storm that's going on outside their house, and just having 2 acting legends of different generations, Downey Jr. and Duvall, going at each other. It's the great scene in that movie that really makes me go back to that movie, even though I don't really like it all that much, and essentially got Robert Duvall the Oscar nomination that he would later get for that film in general. I mean, it's not a great, like I said, it's not a great movie, but it's definitely one of those has one of those moments in there that just sticks with you long after the movie is over. I mean, this guy had a fantastic career of films all across the board, a fantastic career in television. Of course, Lonesome Dove was part of that series. He was also on Broken Trail. He was Joseph Stalin in the Stalin HBO miniseries. Was it a miniseries or a drama? I can't remember what, but I remember watching it in high school a long time ago. He was Dwight D. Eisenhower and Ike. He was on shows like the Mod Squad, the FBI, just a number of different things that this guy was involved in. You've seen something that this guy has been involved in, and it's just, we expect it to happen sooner rather than later. And it's another one of those things where when I heard the news, I thought he had died early on. Like, I thought he died a long time ago, but no, he was still very much alive up until most recently, and then, of course, now he is no longer with us. 95 years old, so, yeah, rest in peace, Robert Duvall, another great acting legend. We've already lost a lot of great people this year. Catherine O'Hara died last month, and now you have Robert Duvall gone. Eric Dane's now gone, and we're only about 6 weeks into February. So, yeah, it's gonna be another bad year for deaths that come out of the blue, and it really sucks. It's just really, death is never a good thing, for obvious reasons. Death is never a good thing. So there you go. That's all I had to say about that. So with all of that said, let us go ahead and move on to some recommendations so we can wrap the show up. And yeah, kind of like I said yesterday on Movie Stop, there was not really a whole lot of new releases over the last month. I mean, last Tuesday was like the big new release week week we've had in a long time with Predator Badlands, Now You See Me, Now You Don't, Regretting You, all these different titles coming out. And now it's another one of those slow weeks where it's mostly just catalog titles getting releases, specifically 4K debuts for stuff like Tank Girl, Westworld, the original movie, not the TV series, Excalibur. Network is getting a Criterion Collection release. What else is getting released this week? Richard Pryor Here and Now is getting a 4K debut. There's a couple of Hanna-Barbera shows coming up. Loopy de Loop is coming out on Blu-ray. I know last month the Fred and Barney show came out on Blu-ray, which it's good to see that Warner Archive is putting out these classic TV shows from like the 70s, from like Hanna-Barbera and all that. I think they're also doing the All-Star Laugh Olympics coming up pretty soon on Blu-ray in the next couple of months. But what else is coming out? Debbie Does Dallas, if you want to watch the at a high definition. But other than that, though, yeah, it's very much slim pickings in terms of new releases this week. So if I do have any recommendations this week, it mostly is the stuff I mentioned in the last segment. You know, I recommend, if you're looking for some good Eric Dane stuff to watch, go watch him in The Last Ship, and also go watch him on Euphoria. He's really good there. And with Robert Duvall, a lot of movies I can list here, so let me just go ahead and run them all down. To Kill a Mockingbird, Bullet, True Grit, MASH, THX 1138, The Godfather movies, The Conversation, Network, as I mentioned, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he's got an uncredited cameo in that, The Great Santini, Apocalypse Now, True Confessions, a very underrated film with him and Robert De Niro, Tender Mercies, The Natural, Colors, Rambling Rose, very good, is kind of an underrated film with him and Laura Dern, Newsies, Falling Down, The Paper, Sling Blade, A Family Thing, Phenomenon, Deep Impact, Gone in 60 Seconds, The Sixth Day, what else? Open Range, great underrated Western from Kevin Costner, Kicking and Screaming, Secondhand Lions, Thank You for Smoking, We Own the Night, Crazy Heart, Get Low, Jack Reacher, Widows, Hustle, and yeah, The Judge for that one scene I was talking about before. So there, I just gave you a series of movies worth checking out. But with all of that said, that is going to wrap up this week's episode of the Reviewing Network Live. So thank you so much for joining us. As the next time we see you, we'll be heading into a brand new month. March 1st will be on Sunday next week. So we'll see you for that. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching and listening to this. If you enjoyed it, check out our playlist in the corner there. Check out the last episode we did. Hit our like button, subscribe button, and notification button. And I will see you guys next week. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Until then, we are out.